Savannah was a young mother of 4. Naturally, she was exhausted, but hopeful, and finally stepping out for a rare night of freedom. But before the sun rose, Savannah Spurlock would vanish into the darkness, leaving behind a chilling trail of unanswered questions, strange behavior, and a final eerie phone call that haunts her family to this day. But how could an ordinary night out spiral into one of Kentucky's most unsettling mysteries? Stay with me, because the truth is far more disturbing than anyone imagined. Welcome to True Crime Stories. If you're new here, I'm your host, Ty Knotts, and I post new true crime cases every single week. So if you're interested in old-fashioned classic true crime, you've come to the right place. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll just keep you up to date with all my future uploads. Savannah Spurlock was born in Richmond, Kentucky. She was defined as a bright and energetic soul, and she attended Madison Central High School, graduated in 2014, and then attended Eastern Kentucky University. Savannah loved her job as a lifeguard, as well as her job in the restaurant business. Her work life was going pretty well, all things considered, but her parents had gotten divorced years before, and now Savannah was going through a rough patch in her relationship with her dad, Cecil. Now, Cecil was a military dad through and through. Unfortunately, he was also wheelchair-bound. Obviously, he loved Savannah, but he also wanted her to be financially responsible and be able to stand on her own 2 feet. Even though Savannah wasn't a wild child and neglectful by any means, she wasn't opposed to partying and hanging out with friends every now and then. So Cecil thought that things were getting out of hand, and so he decided to cut Savannah off financially. And this was a major blow to her. Savannah was living her typical college life, and in her freshman year, she aced her studies. She was a very good student. But this was the time when Savannah's life changed completely. She found out she was pregnant. We don't know anything about the baby's dad, but what we do know is that he wasn't in the picture. Savannah was going to give birth to a baby as a single mom. Well, when the time came, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy that she named Noah. And even though being a young, single, college-going mom was hard, Savannah pushed through. But not to sugarcoat anything, it was definitely hard for her to juggle all of her responsibilities. She was also dating a guy by the name of Shaq Smith, and sometime later, Savannah got pregnant again, and this time, 20-year-old Savannah gave birth to another boy and named him Jace. Now, taking care of one child is hard enough as a 20-year-old mom, but now there were 2 in the equation. So Savannah decided that she would drop out of college and focus on her kids first, and then afterward she could rejoin. This time around, though, Savannah had the support of her boyfriend, Shaq, who honestly seemed like a pretty decent guy. He was there every step of the way and even took care of Noah just the same, even though he wasn't his biological father. Savannah switched between working at a restaurant and as a lifeguard during this time because, well, money was tight. Savannah was struggling, as I'm sure you could imagine, but this is when things took another turn. Savannah found out she was pregnant yet again, and this time she was going to have twins. So now Savannah was a mom of 4 little kids, 4. She gave birth to 2 twins, Zane and Zuri. And just to put things into perspective, Savannah was 22, and she now had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and 2 infant twins. Savannah was definitely dealing with a huge responsibility, and on top of that, she was struggling financially. Savannah's mom and Shaq tried their best to be there for her and to help pull her out of this weird mental place that she was in. But I don't think any of us, other than those who have lived through this themselves, could ever imagine what an incredibly terrifying time this was in Savannah's life. But as with most mothers that find themselves in situations like this, I can't help but believe that Savannah still wouldn't have had it any other way. But needless to say, every mother needs a break every once in a while. And for Savannah, this came when a couple of her friends invited her to a night out. No kids, no spouses, just a girls' night. Savannah could not have been happier about the invitation, and she was counting down the days until that evening arrived. But little did Savannah know that she would also be counting down the final days of her life. So, it was January 3rd, 2019, and Savannah was at home with her kids, and her mom, Ellen, was there to help out too. Ellen wanted her daughter to go have some fun, She was 23 and had a huge responsibility on her shoulders, and she just dropped out of college for her kids and worked tirelessly through shifts to make ends meet. So, in short, Savannah deserved the night out in Ellen's mind. So Ellen encouraged Savannah to go get ready and go out and have fun with her friends. Ellen would look after the kids, and all would be good. So Savannah got ready, and she hopped into the car with two of her friends, a man and a woman, and they all went to a bar called the Other Bar in Lexington, Kentucky. Savannah and her group were having a great time, but when it came to deciding where their next stop was to continue their night out, Savannah and her female friend got into a bit of an argument. I'm assuming Savannah and her friend must have wanted to go two different places, and that's how the disagreement started. But it got to the point where Savannah's friends actually left, just straight up walked off. Now, at this point, the only person at the bar was this male friend, and he too decided to leave because he had work in the morning or something. So Savannah's friends left a tipsy Savannah alone at this bar. You can already tell things are not about to go down well. But Savannah was apparently having a good time. She was in no rush to leave, and she decided to stay at the bar, drinking and talking to strangers until 2:30 in the morning. She was actually seen on CCTV leaving the bar at around 2:30 a.m. on January 4th, and she was seen with three men. Now, we don't know who these men are, but Savannah was leaving with them. 15 minutes later at 2:45 a.m., Savannah's mom, Ellen, got a FaceTime call, and it was actually Savannah. She looked okay, minus the tipsy state that she was in, and she promised Ellen that she'd be home soon. The only thing Ellen could tell was that Savannah was sitting in a car. The two hung up, but tragically, Savannah wouldn't come back as she promised. Morning came, and Ellen woke up, but she realized that Savannah hadn't made it home. She wasn't in her bedroom, she wasn't with her kids, and she wasn't picking up her phone. If Savannah was staying somewhere with a friend, then she would have let her mom know. This was very out of left field for Savannah. She wasn't your typical 23-year-old party child. She was a mom of four. She knew that she had to be home for her kids. So after getting no answer from Savannah or her friends, Ellen decided to report Savannah missing. First in Lexington, where Savannah was last seen, and then in Richmond, where the investigation kicked off for the missing 23-year-old mom of four. The police in Lexington were of zero help when Savannah was reported missing, because they instructed her family to wait 24 hours to report her missing. It was actually the Richmond police who took Savannah's disappearance seriously. She was a mom, and she distinctly told Ellen that she'd be home in no time. So where was she now? Her family was very anxious and worried for her. So the investigators started with the last place where Savannah was seen, the Other Bar. The police checked their surveillance footage, and sure enough, they saw Savannah leaving with two men in the footage. It was actually three men, but only two were visible in this particular footage. She seemed comfortable around the men. It wasn't like she was being followed. But from the footage, it was impossible to identify these men. The only lead the investigators had was that one of the men Savannah was with was seen driving a black pickup truck. So the detectives turned to the public for help. They made all of this information public, and they wanted anyone and everyone with valuable information to come forward. The search for Savannah stretched out for weeks and then months, but nothing came up. In the meantime, someone did come forward, and they finally knew who this black pickup truck belonged to. And it was actually the Girard County police officer, Evan Preston, who saw that same truck cruising down Highway 52, and he tailed the truck for a while. Like, seriously, props to this guy, because he was there at the right place at the right time and just so happened to pass by that truck after hearing about it in a report recently. So with this lead, the investigators were able to figure out who these men were that Savannah was seen with. The men were approached by the police, and then they were called in for questioning. They looked like the last people to have seen Savannah, and she drove away from the bar in their vehicle, so they had to have known something. And the crazy thing is, these men were actually very forthcoming with the police. They gave them all of the information about what happened the night that Savannah left the bar with them. And one name kept popping up over and over in their conversation. It was David Sparks, man number 3 in the footage. So the two men talked to the police, and they came clean that they had met Savannah that night, along with David, at the bar, when her friends had left her alone to fend for herself. The guys and Savannah chatted and drank together for a bit, and then they decided to leave the bar and go to David's house to continue partying and drinking there. Savannah took off with these men, who were literal strangers, to another stranger's house for drinks. This is not safe at all, no matter what the outcome is. It's clear to see that Savannah was not in her right mind that evening, likely owed to the amount of alcohol that she'd been drinking. Alone, mind you. I'm not saying this as a way of victim blaming by any means, but guys, if you're already drunk, understand that it may be time to stop. I know that everyone wants to hang out and have a good time every once in a while, but be safe. Don't be at bars alone. Don't drink to the point that you completely lose your wits about you. Be smart and be vigilant, because there's a lot of evil people in this world. But anyway, Savannah and the two guys reached David's house, and right off the bat, the two guys got a very weird vibe from David. He was looking very inappropriately at Savannah, and even made advances towards her when she was clearly drunk and couldn't even think straight. I can't imagine how Savannah must have felt, being drunk and either knowing or not knowing that this guy was trying to make a move on her. The guys with Savannah also saw this, and they told the detectives that David definitely looked like he had plans for Savannah, for lack of a better word. But what did they do next? The two guys left David alone with Savannah. These guys could clearly see that David was behaving inappropriately towards her, and the best thing they thought to do was leave. I will never understand how so many people are just able to stand idly by and watch people get taken advantage of, or watch people be victimized in one way or another. But that's exactly what they did. They left Savannah there in the hands of a predator. Then a couple days later, when news of Savannah's disappearance was on TV, these guys came across it, and that's when they were struck with that sinking feeling. The young woman who is currently missing was the same woman they'd left with David that night, and realization hit these guys like a truck. And one of them actually called David to ask whether he knew anything about Savannah or not, because according to the guy's story now, David was the last person to see Savannah, and he actually was with Savannah until she went missing. So when the guy inquired about Savannah, David said he knew nothing about her. Basically, David said that at some point after the guys left, he fell asleep on the couch while Savannah took his bed. And a couple hours later, he was shaken awake by none other than Savannah, who wanted to ask what his address was. In David's mind, Savannah was calling someone and they were coming to pick her up. So David gave her the address and just went back to sleep. The next morning, when he woke up, Savannah was gone. David assumed that she'd left with whoever came to pick her up, and that was that. So by this point, the investigators were very suspicious of David, but they wanted to find him and get his side of the story. So the police found out that he lived in Girard County, which is about 40 minutes away from the bar that Savannah went to with her friends, and they wanted to have a little chat with the man himself. David was called for an interrogation, and he basically told the same story that I just told you. How the guys left Savannah at his home, how he was the perfect gentleman and allowed Savannah to sleep on his bed, how Savannah woke him up for the address, and then she was gone the next day. But the investigators knew better than to believe his story. There was just something unsettling about David, especially when the detectives asked certain questions. The way David answered was very eerie. The investigators straight up asked David if he thought if Savannah was alive, and he admitted he'd pondered the possibility that she may not be. Detectives had no idea just how right he would prove to be. So with that, the interrogation was over. And even though the police felt a certain way about David, they couldn't arrest him yet. But he was a suspect in Savannah's case, and because of this, a search warrant was issued in no time to flip David's house upside down for any clues. The search extended from the house all the way to the farmland that surrounded the house. This farmland actually belonged to David's parents. They grew strawberries and a bunch of other things on this land, and it was pretty vast. The investigators searched the entire house, and they even checked the farmland outside, but nothing came up. They had cadaver dogs, officers, and search teams going in and out of the house, but it was unfruitful. Savannah's family was losing hope. It had been a long time since she was last seen or heard from, and they were dreading where she could be. The chances of finding Savannah alive were getting slimmer and slimmer as each day passed. The detectives were also at a loss in this case. They knew that they were at the right place. They knew that David was suspicious, and something definitely happened that could explain Savannah's disappearance. But they just needed that smoking gun, that bullseye, if you will, to hit their target and crack this very confusing case. Well, the police's relentlessness paid off because in early April of 2019, almost 4 months after Savannah disappeared, they conducted another search at David's house. And well, let's just say they found a lot of things this time. Firstly, there was a mark on David's closet door, and when the detectives used luminol, the whole thing lit up. It was exactly what you think it was. The stain was tested, and it matched Savannah's DNA. The investigators also uncovered a very strange note written by David. It read, quote, "I simply don't care at all. I feel no true love for anything, now that I know what I really am. I see a greater need to hide my true self, but I just want to be free. I stay in a constant state of aggression, and nothing seems to help anymore." It continued by saying, quote, "How do you look your mother in the eyes and tell her you're born a psychopath? That she gave birth to a monster, someone who wouldn't care a bit to take the life of another human." This is so disturbing, and I'm not sure why the police didn't find this earlier. When they asked David about this letter, he said that he'd written this letter 2 years ago when he was rejected by a woman. The letter itself wasn't dated or anything, so who really knows when it was written? But judging by how this case unfolded, it definitely shed light on David and who he was as a person. And it was revealed that he suffered from depression and anger issues for a long time. Then, the investigators checked David's cell phone, mainly his social media, and they stumbled upon his Snapchat. And there he was having conversations with friends about Savannah's case. His search history also showed a lot about him searching for any progress in Savannah's case, and he looked very invested, as if he wanted to see whether the detectives found something progressive about the woman's disappearance or not. Well, a few months passed, and the investigators kept their eye on David, who was getting very irritated at this point, and was very vocal about the police trying to supposedly pin the crime on him. The investigators were just waiting for that perfect moment for David to crack and spill everything. But before that could happen, someone else came to the police, and this led them straight to David's farmland outside his home. Someone close to David had called the detectives to let them know they'd found something very bizarre. See, it was actually David's dad who called the police. He was working on the strawberry patch outside their home one day, and a very distinct and offensive odor invaded his nose. David's dad was stunned. He'd never smelled anything like this before, and he just knew that he couldn't keep quiet about this. So he called the police, and that was what led them to conduct a more thorough search outside the house, this time all around the property. Interestingly enough, the investigators had searched this area the first time too, and while they were wandering around the strawberry patch on the farmland, the investigators noticed that David was laser focused on one particular place. He was intensely staring at a certain section of the strawberry patch, and only when officers moved away from that place did David finally take a breath. Now, looking back, the detectives knew that they'd missed something really big. But not this time. A team was brought in at midnight on July 10th of 2019, and the ground was dug, and within no time they found something. It was the body of a woman, and tragically, it was 23-year-old Savannah Spurlock, and she was no longer alive. She was found in a shallow grave outside David's home, just below that strawberry patch, and with her body they dug up a gray rug. And see, this rug was the exact same one as what was found in David's house when the police searched it earlier on. And it was later found out that David had asked his sister where she got the rug from, and it turns out he bought a second one because he used the first one to wrap up Savannah. Looking back, the investigators realized that they were right on top of Savannah's body the first time around, but it took them months to discover the missing piece in Savannah's case. By this point, medical examiners were unable to determine what exactly had happened to her, but they knew one thing. Savannah endured a lot before she lost her life. But what that was, we'll never know, because investigators never figured it out, and David won't tell. When Savannah's family got to know about this tragic discovery, their reactions were a mix of relief and also insurmountable sadness. They'd been searching for Savannah for months, and even though they were mentally preparing themselves for the worst, it still knocked them hard when they found out. They were relieved to have finally been able to lay Savannah to rest in a familiar place, but the loss was immeasurable. Finally, thanks to David's dad, his son, David Sparks, was arrested for murdering Savannah Spurlock. David initially pleaded not guilty, but later in December of 2020, he changed his plea to guilty to possibly get a lesser sentence and save his skin. Initially, if proven guilty in trial, David was to get a life sentence in prison, but with this plea deal, he was only sentenced to 50 years. He's currently incarcerated at the Southeast State Correctional Facility in Kentucky. Since we don't have an official cause for Savannah's passing, we can only assume what happened to her, and it's believed that David tried to make a pass at Savannah, and when she left alone with him, that was when things went downhill. It's possible Savannah put up a fight, but David eventually subdued her, and in the process took her life. Then it's believed that David buried Savannah's body as well as the rug outside in the farmland and dusted his hands off. You have to remember, Savannah just wanted a nice night out with her friends after such a long time spent raising her little ones. She just wanted that one night to let off some steam and rehabilitate herself, for lack of a better word. But one dumb argument with a friend squashed those chances. Then soon after, a decision to leave with people who she believed were her new friends ended with her losing her life. Looking back, there are a lot of what-ifs in this case. What if Savannah's friends hadn't left her alone at the bar? What if Savannah had gone home instead of sticking around at the bar? What if she hadn't agreed to go to David's house with those men? What if the guys hadn't left Savannah alone with David and they had just taken her home? In hindsight, the events that transpired in this case, they're not the fault of one individual. It's just a hodgepodge of mistakes and bad decisions. I'm sure Savannah wasn't out looking for trouble because, in all honesty, whoever does? I'm sure the two men, as well as Savannah's friends, felt very guilty after they left her alone and drunk at that bar, and she ended up at David's house. But all that aside, David is the true villain in this story. Savannah was a great mom, as great as she could be given her age and circumstances. She was patching things up with her dad. She was literally trying her best to provide for her kids, and this shouldn't have happened to her. Did Savannah make some questionable decisions that fateful night? Absolutely. But again, who hasn't in their life? But does that justify what happened to her? Never. Now, these 4 children are left without a mother, all because one man couldn't keep his hands to himself. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Suzanne Johnston, Christina R., Stacy E., Sally Mulhogue, and Caitlin Cantanilla. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public. And it's a great way to support the channel and help out. And I appreciate all of you guys that have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or find a link down in the description. And don't forget, True Crime Stories t-shirts are also now available. You can grab one of those from a link down in the description as well. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.